Howdy there, my beloved haplogroup. Christopher suggested that we send a video greeting to you, celebrating my 80th birthday and my entrance into my 9th decade. As Bilbo once said, I don't know half of you as much as I should, and I don't like half as much as you deserve. But at this stage of my life, I find that the latter part of that statement has no truth in it. I find that I have, at long last, passed through my years of judgment and can now say, without a trace of uncertainty, I love you all. You have been with me through and past so much and put up with quite a bit of what I'm certain most of you have thought of as nonsense. And for that I am grateful. But I have to add that I am also, for the most part, unrepentant. Because there are lots of things I got to discover while failing to do all the stuff I thought, and so did many of you, that I was supposed to do. But after Chicago and Door County, Green Bay and Seattle, I finally came back to where I started from and began to notice you. I mean really notice you. And fall in love with you. For good and all. Randy, my oldest brother, my bête noir, the little guy who came along and cut me out of Dad's heart. Just as well, kiddo. I would have made a lousy football player, and I was possibly the worst outfielder that MacArthur High School girls' gym class ever had. All I could do was pray the ball never came anywhere near me. If I got hold of it, I threw like a girl, because, duh. I never could see the damn thing coming toward me through the sky, and then I always lost track of who I was supposed to throw it to. Total fail. But early on, in the Chicago years, it seemed that we had so much in common. We both still loved that city. I remember when you suggested that we walk Halstead Street someday, north to south. It was just the sort of thing I would love to do. Sadly, there was never time, and when I last mentioned it to you, you had long forgotten. But I never did, that you wanted to do it, and that you wanted to do it with me. Did you ever know I was up there in the Conrad Hilton that night in 1968? That I was looking for you? That I even thought I might have seen you? You can see anything when you're really looking for it. That I decided to cut out of the Hubert Humphrey suite to cross the road and go looking for you. I made it across the street, but I had to go as far north as the Tribune Tower to do it. Never found you, but was always glad I tried. I remember the Monument Fair, when they had art events at all the monuments in Lincoln Park. You went with Allison and Pam. I went with Chris, but maybe that's the same visit where Steve and I went to dinner with you guys at a Japanese restaurant. And I got so drunk on sake that when we got home, I shut my thumb in the car door and didn't even notice until I couldn't get my hand away from the door. That's when you got the idea to take me to the emergency room and pretend I was your wife, so that I could use her insurance. So there I was, with you pretending to have her and Steve pretending not to know me. We were so broke, and I was so grateful. Of late, we often seem at cross purposes. You so certain and accurate in your opinions, and me very certain in my own, but closer to a babbling idiot when trying to explain them. I'm better in print, ergo. It's actually fun sometimes when we hit upon something we share. We should be allies of Iran, I said once, while we were traveling south to southern Illinois. Yes, you said, finally something we could agree upon and find some satisfaction in dissing the idiots with uninformed opinions. So much fun. So in the end, dear brother, you go ahead and watch your sporty ball, as Carolyn calls it, and lecture the world on the misdeeds of Lincoln and Obama. and even call me out on my support of Ukraine, putting me among those deluded by my metaphors and fantasies of liberal democracy. You are my oldest brother, and I will always love you. We are 6. Paul. They say you aren't here anymore. They are wrong. And I think we all know that, Barbie especially, and your children, even your siblings. To us, you were always here. Yeah, I pushed you down the stairs that one time, but don't you remember the time that Dad told us all to get out of the water at some beach or other, but you didn't want to? And Dad thought I was disobeying him by going back for myself and never knew that I did it for you. Ah, well, you were only 2. How could you remember that? I remember because Dad bawled me out for it. But you gotta know that I only pushed you down the stairs because you were arguing with me about something, and it wasn't that I disagreed with you. Don't even remember what it was about. It was just that you reminded me so much of a part of myself that I hated, so I pushed it away. Happened to be attached to you. Sorry about that. But I've never forgotten it either, and I've never forgotten the reason. But I guess you forgave me because later it was you and Bob and Megan, who came to visit me on the farm. And even later than that, you came to see me in Seattle. You even came to one of my parties. I think you might have come to the moon. Or was that Dennis? Joan did, but more on that later. And you welcomed me to Pond Hill Farm. Remember when you had the big bonfire and asked me to call the quarters? You advanced to favorite brother status right then and there. I particularly remember the last time, the eclipse. I remember you greeted me with, Barb, I loved your book. It should be a movie. But even before that, remember when I came and you took me to see Mom and Dad in the nursing home? And when you brought them to the house for dinner while I was there with Christopher? You gave me the best last moments with our parents when you have already suffered some of the worst, but you didn't throw it in my face that I was never there, that I had not shared the burden. You simply shared your home with us all, and I could see that it gave you great joy to be able to do so. In so many ways, you were the best of us, big and bluff and forthright and loving. When you came to visit in Seattle, I was showing off a bit, wanting to show you how cool I was, how many friends I had, how together I had finally gotten it. My welcoming you was about me, not about you. But when I saw you at Pond Hill Farm, I knew which of us had really gotten it together. I fell in love with you there, and I will always love you. We are 6. Dennis, what can I say about one of the best brothers of all? I know I already said that about Paul, but I mean it. About all of you, really. But Dennis is a gem. Not only are you intelligent, kind, and funny, but you also cool, as in you knew the future was in solar way before any of us did. I remember even less of you as a child, except for the one occasion on which my boyfriend at the time asked you how you got all that white hair. You were so blonde. And you said you got it from the milkman, and Mom never refused to believe that you could possibly have said that. And that's it. You were so much younger. You didn't bug me and we didn't hang out. Then I went away and you grew up and went to Colorado. I remember coming to see you when you were going to college in Michigan. Christopher and I doing a long drive around through from Green Bay to Jones and then up through Indiana to see you. And I think we did see you, that is. But I don't remember it at all. I remember Chris and I, and Carrie and me taking the ferry home across Lake Michigan. So I know we must have seen you. And then, do you remember going fishing with Randy and Brian, maybe Paul too, and me? We were at Hiawatha Beach and we went out in a fishing dinghy of some kind. We had caught a few fish and put them on a stringer, but some of the stringer got lost. Randy went ballistic, yelling about the fish, who were now doomed to a tragic death, hung on hooks that they couldn't escape. Seemed some of you wanted to blame Brian, and Randy seemed to think that likely, but then somehow he figured out that Dad was to blame. Dad, who wasn't there. Dad, who had always been careless with our furniture when we were moving. So he taught us to be careless, too. So obviously one of us careless Sibs must have done it. But it was you in the end. But it was, in the end, Dad's fault. Sorry, missed a line there. But it was you in the end. It was, in the end, Dad's fault. I could hardly keep from laughing. But you were calm and steady. The stringer was lost. These things happened. I think you prepared another one and we went on fishing, or maybe we went back. I don't know. I just remember that we lost a stringer. Randy went crazy and blamed Dad, who wasn't there, and you were calm and steady, and I was filled with admiration. You came to see me in Seattle at the 79th Street house. You were on your way to Canada to join a buddy for skiing, but you came to see me. And I think that's when I discovered that I had a real gem for a brother. Because I think we talked about a lot of stuff. About what I don't remember, but it was good. We became friends. Randy and Paul were always brothers, but you became a real friend. I loved you for that. Then I did my big drive around the Northeast, visited friends in Bangor, and found to my delight that the highway connecting Dave and Lydia's house with yours in Burlington was US 2, which I knew from the Upper Peninsula and which ended a few miles north of me in Seattle. I drove the miles and found your house, complete with sheep and Taylor's bedroom to bunk down in. A dinner out in some of the loveliest company in the world. We went to watch a racing meet in a lovely New England college town. Hallie didn't win, but it didn't matter much. It was autumn and the leaves were shining. You came to pick me up in Montreal after my epic train trip from Seattle. And on the way to your house, you listened to me go on and on about polar bears and my dinner in Montreal. At least I imagine that you did, since that was pretty much all I had to talk about. I don't remember. Let's wait a minute. Was there something politically going on? I don't even remember the exact year. I do remember thinking that I could bring you and Anne together with my old friends who had just moved to Burlington. You graciously invited them to dinner. She couldn't come, but he did with the 2 kids, who immediately made pests of themselves of the first water and refused to eat your lovely dinner. I can't even remember his first name right now, but he didn't lift a finger. I regret not following through on my impulse to slap them all silly. I wish you'd lived closer, but then I am the one who moved furthest away for the longest time. In the meantime, I love getting your emails when I have sent one of my bookhouse entries. Thank you for everything. We are 6. Brian. Well, you've already heard the story about how embarrassed Joan and I were that our mother was pregnant yet again, this time with you. By that time, we both knew how such things came about. Mom was over 40, I think, way too old for that sort of thing. And now, because she was pregnant, everybody would know that she was still doing that. Oh, how humiliating. Then you almost died. If we didn't have a doctor who did house calls, if he didn't hear something in Mom's voice when she called, if he had not seen something in you that didn't look quite like the flu the rest of us had, well, nobody would ever hear the Northwoods Blues played the way only you can play it. I don't actually remember if that was before or after the Easter I fell in love with you. I still thought of you as unnecessary burden on the family, not to mention proof of our mother's sinful behavior that Easter morning when Mom plunked you into my arms and told you to care for you during the service. Seems she had volunteered to do something or other, as she was wont to do. And I don't know how it happened, but by the end of the day I thought you were the cutest little thing that had ever been born. I still do. But then the years passed, and 13 years is 13 years, so we did not hang out while you were learning to play guitar. I heard you were in a band, but didn't think a whole lot of it. Wasn't everybody in a band in those days? Then one of your bandmates got into a name band, I forget which was, and so I thought maybe you had a chance to do that too. Remember when you came to visit us on the farm, and you and I got jobs picking apples? That was a blast. I had more fun with you than peeling pumpkins. More fun than on that little fishing trip we took down some river in Minnesota, catching nothing but riverweed. I'm glad we had those times together, because the next thing I knew you were getting married, having a kid. And I'm divorced again and living in Seattle. Time flies when you're having too much fun. I had such a good time visiting you at that little house when you were still recuperating from your wounds, reteaching yourself guitar. Were you and Lori back together yet? It seems like I remember we invited her out to dinner. Anyway, Lori and I had already bonded over Peachy Woodhouse, so we got along fine. We got that old trunk of Mom's out of the basement. You were going to refinish it. I don't remember exactly what happened there. I do know that I had parts of it repaired in Seattle. It sits in the living room here in Madison now. My Jerry Garcia doll holds the lid closed. I think we put extra quilts in it. Much of what I know of you these past few years has been as my favorite blues player. Now, I must admit that my direct knowledge of blues players is fairly slight, but I know good music when I hear it. Never mind that you are my brother. I love listening to you play. Love watching you play, bent over your guitar, fingers picking at the notes, the chords, listening for the next riff to come along. Randy is the best at being big brother. Paul is the best all around of us all. Dennis is the one I know in conversation and amity, but you, little brother, are my favorite. You are a musician. To think that Ted and Ellen, those pillars of church and commerce, turned out an artist. I hear it in your fingers. I love you. We're 6. Joan, dear little Joni, what can I say? We have no real childhood memories, do we? Or do you? We should. We shared a room, a bed for many, many years. But we did not go close, not until we were much older. I don't really understand it. We're sisters. But I was always off reading books in the trees, and you became Mother's little helper. Sorry about that. Did Mom put all of my chores on you? We double dated to a prom once, but I don't remember us getting all girly about it, did we? I missed both of your weddings, and I apologize once again for that, but as God is my witness, I never believed you really wanted me. When you asked me to be your matron of honor for your wedding with Meta, and I stood you up, I honestly thought Mother had made you ask me because nobody else was available at the time. Of course, I had convinced myself that this was true because I didn't want to leave Chicago for reasons I don't recall and probably don't want to. But I was genuinely shocked to learn that you had been hurt that I didn't come. That you were both hurt and angry. That possibility had never occurred to me. And the question should maybe have been, why not? I think you came to see me on the farm because I seem to remember that you liked the cut glass window in the front door, only piece worth anything, I think you said. I came to see you, complete with Christopher and baby Caroline, on the road trip when I connected briefly with Dennis in Michigan. Your house and your lifestyle intimidated the hell out of me. It was more a social call than a real visit between sisters. Then you came to see me in Seattle. Did you come to my apartment, or did I meet you at the market? I know we were at the market because you insisted on buying me something. We settled on a blue fleece sweater. I still wear it. It has one cigarette burn, but the colors still glow. Fleece doesn't fade. I remember that we talked a little about Dad, I think, and there were instances in which you seemed to understand what I was talking about. Meta was in meeting, so you even came down to the Blue Moon with me, wearing your sweet little red leather gloves. He was supposed to meet us there later, but bowed out. I just remember that it seemed as if every shaggy guy who came through the door hit on you, and you kept saying, "Oh, that's not my husband." It was the first time I remember feeling close to you, and I was so grateful for it. The 50th anniversary was marvelous, a tribute to your reputation as a hostess. Also the first time I ever saw you drunk. You were a great drunk. Paul was intoning our mother and our Father, and I distinctly heard you say, who art in heaven, and that's when I fell in love with you. You and me, sis. Onward. I have always characterized the years before and the years after as Joan was the responsible one. I was crazy. And then Joan got crazier and I got more responsible. Works for me. Then, oh my God, Turkey. Me with my oversized suitcase, you appalled at same. I thought I needed something like a steamer trunk. I was going to put stickers on it, but nothing stuck. Total fail. And it wouldn't even fit in the bedroom I was assigned in Istanbul. I had to unpack it for an efficient trip to the village. No, we don't pack for cold and warm weather. Not complete outfits. We don't. No, we aren't going to get dressed up for anything. Most of what you have in here is irrelevant. So much for Barbara, the international traveler. Hello, Barbara, thinking she's starring in Casablanca or something. Ah. And then the street of the satellite dishes and the wayward banana peel. Right after you had insisted that I buy an evil eye pin and wear it. The guys from the shop who insisted that I sit on a stool that they had brought out because sitting on the curb would give me a sickness in my rear, you said. Something like that. You bought me a jaunty cane. I still have that too, it's red. I shoved my swollen foot into a hiking boot. Good thing I brought those, huh? And we haired off the next day to Hagia Sophia. But mostly all I could think of was how I had managed to screw up the best time we two could have together as sisters. Now I was someone who probably needed taking care of, not someone whose company was just to be enjoyed. It ended up all right, I guess. I got to do most of the things I wanted to do, including spending time with you. Wonderful breakfasts every morning. An entire evening sitting on this floor watching burek being made, and then eating it for supper. Meeting a few people in your village, and hearing how they loved and admired you. Seeing you adopting another culture and way of life. You are amazing, my dear sister. How I wish we could spend those times together again. But I am happy at last in my hermitage in Madison and have no need to travel on. I see you now fixing up your bungalows for guests, or perhaps for earthquake refugees. I wish I was there, or you were here, or that we had discovered one another earlier and had those memories as well. One of these days, darling Joni, one of these days. I love you. We are 6. And just look at the wealth we have all created. Megan, Christopher, Audrey, Aisha, Caroline, Dylan, Allison, Laurel, Derek, Julia, Taylor, and Hallie. All of them. Shining like Vermont in October, the prairies in spring, the towers of Chicago, the snows of the Northland, Turkish mosaics and whitecaps on Puget Sound. They are the second stanza of a long poem, the first line of which belongs to Ted Bates and Ellen Ponsonus. Proof positive that trees of beauty flower wherever love is found.